In this video, we're going to talk about how awesome it would be if we could write one UI and have that deployed against every operating system or device we wanted to run on. Windows, Linux, Apple products, Android products, just one code base for all of them. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. If this is your first time with me here, my name's Andrew, and I do coding tutorials and other fun stuff with C#. But I just want you guys to know that this video is covered under my quality guarantee, where if this isn't your favorite video, the next one is free. So you can take that to heart. So the first thing I want to talk about is the state of desktop apps in C# right now. And there's two technologies right now that are really your only choices for the most part. You've got WPF and UWP. WPF's a little bit older. It was basically in 2007, I think, is when it actually released. Really, this was Windows XP, Vista. This could do like enhanced drawing stuff. And then later in Windows 10, they moved on from WPF and did UWP. And the real big difference between these two is that these are sandboxed. And I'm just going to jump through this comparison here. I'm going to have a link for anything I share in the description below. But I'm just going to go through this quick. So the real differences are if you need to support old operating systems, you use WPF today. If you want to support just Windows 10, you use UWP. But this comes with a caveat, because depending on which version of the controls you use for UWP, you actually need that specific version of Windows 10 installed. So UWP is very version of Windows specific, especially when you're using the WinUI 2 controls. It matters which version of Windows you use, but you do get more deploy targets. It's not just PC and notebooks. You get to do like the cool things like Xbox, phone, and Surface devices. WPF is optimized for keyboard and mouse. UWP is optimized for touch. You get to use pretty much the same languages. I mean, you don't get to use F# for UWP, but I'm sorry if you were looking forward to that. But otherwise, I think these UWP ones run slightly faster, but the WPF I've never seen any problems with. The advantage over WinForms is that these do use vector graphics. Otherwise, it's mostly the same. I mean, you're still using XAML. Deployments are slightly different, that these basically go through the Microsoft Store, and these you can kind of do whatever you want through MSI installs or just copying out there. But otherwise, everything's basically the same on these two. It's the same code behinds. It's the same MVVM model. Really, they're not that different. It's just a little bit of how they're deployed. And then the real big difference, the UWP is sandboxed. It's kind of like the browser. You can't just go out and grab files wherever you want to. You have to grab them in a very specific location. But in WPF, you have more access to the entire machine. You can go grab system files or whatever you want to do. That's really the difference between these two. And I'm sorry for not mentioning this earlier, but if at any time you want to skip ahead, just look at the bar below. I should have marked the sections off for you guys. So the real thing I wanted to show you guys today was this cool thing that I found called the Uno platform. Maybe you guys have heard of it, maybe not. I don't think it's getting enough traction yet. But it's really cool because this lets you do pixel-perfect multi-platform applications with C# and WinUI. Basically what they let you do, and I just want to compare this to Flutter really quickly because that's really what Flutter says they do, Google's platform. They let you do the pixel-perfect multi-platform apps. So I just love the fact that C# has an alternative, and this has been going for about a year, I guess, with this platform team. But so if you look at the targets that they have Windows, Mac, Linux, and then you can even test this with the Windows subsystem so that you can test that on the same system that you're writing your code with. You can only develop these with Mac and OS if you have a Mac computer. I don't, so I won't be able to show you that today. But I will be able to show you Windows, WebAssembly, Android, all on the same machine. So we'll get to see some cool stuff. Then they're touting pixel perfect everywhere. I haven't used it enough to say, hey, yeah, that's true. But I do like the C# and XAML. It's very cool compared to having to use React or JavaScript all over the place. And then they let you use whatever IDE you want. They do have like the gallery I'll show later. and then they've got some WebAssembly that you can try it in the browser. So that's really what we're going to look at today. So the other thing I'm going to show you here is what the prerequisites are. They do have ones for Mac, Visual Studio Code, and Writer. I'm just going to show you really quickly that this requires that you have UWP installed, the workload. It requires Xamarin. It's using that target to allow it to do the compiles for Android and iOS. Even though you're not actually using any of the Xamarin stuff, it's using that for the compiles. Then the Android emulators are installed so that we can actually use that emulation on the device. And then I also have the ASP web stuff installed. I guess .NET Core 2.2, I don't think I installed it, but it must have got installed somewhere in there too. The last thing you need to do is install these platform templates. But I'll again link these in the description below. You guys can come out here and find this. It's super simple. Let's get started. So once you jump into Visual Studio, you can create a template off this cross-platform app template. So if I just start one here, we're going to call this YouTube test because it's not going to be a crazy awesome app, but it'll be okay. So let me just create this app here. All right, so the first thing it's asking me to do is to change my product targets. I'm not going to install the new SDK right away, so I'm just going to change this target version here. Okay, so the first thing that you get after everything loads is you can see that I have a new solution here with our YouTube test. We get an Android target, an iOS target, a macOS target. We get a shared project. We get a UWP target, and we get a WASM target. So basically, all of these are going to basically be there for you to deploy your code to, but we're not going to do anything today specific to those. The only thing we're going to touch is this shared component right here. So if we look at what this is, let me first set this as my startup project, just so we're not doing crazy things with Android all the time. So it should be a little bit quicker that way, hopefully. So what we have here, if we look at the default template, is we have a pretty much a blank grid that the background gets set by default. So, if your Windows is in dark mode, the app's going to get skinned with dark mode. And then they just put text block on here with hello world. And then the application is just, basic XAML. They have a strings thing here, which I'm not sure what's in here, but I guess it's your application name. It's probably used by some of these other targets. And then they have a shared asset here that is actually, it looks like just the markdown that's being used for that, for a logo that's going to pop up on the screen. So if we go back here, we look at this main page. It's just an initialized component, so there's nothing going on. All we're going to do is get a hello world text box on it. So let me just change this app up a little bit first. So if you've never used XML, what do you think you can do in the designer? Because these are drag and drops over here, but the one thing you can do here is you can click over here and you should get a different cursor. So what you should be able to do is hover over here and click, and then that gives you a splitter. So that's to split the section. In your grid, it's created this row definition, and it's given this funky syntax here where it says 91 star and 149 star, and those are actually like ratios. So it's saying use 91 and then like times the rest of the space that's open. So you can see this better if I do like 1 and 2 here. So this is 1/3 up here, and this is 2/3 right here. You don't actually need the star, or you don't actually need the 1, because it just assumes 1 with just the star. So this section at the top's taking 1/3 of my screen. This section at the bottom's taking 2/3 of my screen. But the other thing it did was it updated my text block here. It added a grid row span of 2, which we don't actually need. So we can just remove this here. It won't make any difference, but it'll change things in the future, so we just want that gone. So now our text box just sits in the top half, and we want to put something in this bottom half so we can play with these apps. So let's just grab a button here. It's easy. It's super small right now, but all we're going to do is we're going to go to right click on it, go to layout, and do reset all. That didn't do anything fancy yet, but we're going to come down here. We're going to click on that button. We're going to do horizontal alignment, and we're going to set this to stretch. And then we're going to do vertical alignment, and we're going to set this to stretch. And now we have a button that fills up that entire area. We're going to come up here to this one, and we're going to set this to horizontal alignment of center and vertical alignment of center. So now we have center text. We should be able to run this thing on an app, resize it, and see what it looks like. Oh, I forgot that. When you first create these solutions, you have to right click on the solution, go to properties, go to the configuration properties, and actually click here for it to deploy. Otherwise, it won't actually deploy it on your Windows machine. You also have to have developer settings turned on. Let's make sure that the project gets built for the first time. All right, so now we should be able to run it on the local machine. Everything looks like it's running this time. So this is the logo I was talking about earlier when I looked at the assets file. Okay, so we have a text box that's centered up at the top, 1/3 of the screen, 2/3 of the screen, and then we have this gigantic button it doesn't do anything, but you can see I can click it. The other thing is, because of the way that we've done that grid layout, it's adaptive for us, so we kind of get that flexible screen layout already. This looks kind of silly here, so I'm going to close this really quick. I'm going to add a margin just so it doesn't take up the entire space. So the way margins work here, if you've never used it before, is if I just do 100, that's 100 on all sides. If I do 110 here, you can see that the first number is the horizontal, the second number is the vertical. So if I make that bigger, you can see like 100, 200, it does that like that. If I want to keep going here, I can do 10 and 10. Let's do 20 and 10 just so you can see them on the screen. But the 20 goes over here on the right side, the 10's on the bottom. So so it basically goes around left top, left top, right bottom, left top, right bottom. So that's what you can do with margin. I'm just going to shortcut it here and set this all to 100, just so we have an app that doesn't look so crazy when it's full size on the screen. But it looks like that didn't actually build my changes. Let me see if I saved here. Maybe I have to rebuild here. All right, let's run it again. The UWP one is actually the hardest one I've seen to work with. It's actually way easier to work with the WASM version. So so here we've got that margin going on. If I resize the screen, we can resize up to the point where the button goes away, which isn't exactly what I want, but let's fix that here. Let's give this a min height of 30, which all you have to do is come in this area somewhere and do a min height, and we'll set that to 30. And then hopefully it'll give us where we shrink it down. It doesn't just completely go away on us. Oh, unfortunately, it still does. Oh, sorry, I didn't rebuild again. Here, let me just switch this. I'm pretty much done working with that one. Let's switch it over here. So I switched this to the WASM version. So now instead, this will let us go to a browser. The first build's always going to be the worst. So I did cut the build time out for you guys just so you didn't have to go sit through that. But the first build is terrible. After that, it's not so bad. So here we have it, our same app in the browser. All we had to do was build the other target. If we resize this screen, we still get this weird issue where the button doesn't quite do what we want. But I can show something else that we couldn't see in those other ones. Let me move the windows around here just so we can see those at the same time. Because now what you can see is that they actually have live reloads going. So if I switch the background color for this button, let's change it to green just so we can have something that we can see. If we save that here, you see that instantly it basically goes out, reloads that, loads it to green. So the background changed. So we have our web version running. Let's stop this really quick. Build the Droid version. And then I've got the simulator loaded. We'll see how long that takes to start up, but I'll probably skip ahead just so you guys don't have to watch the first compile too. Okay, so we got that to build. I'm going to switch over here to Android. We've got a Pixel 2 emulator. So let's see what happens if once the emulator comes up. It's starting to push the Droid app over for us. So I skipped the 30 seconds it took for that to push across, but it didn't actually take that long. So here we've got a white screen, the app's starting to load here, or get pushed over to our emulator. And there we have our app. Here we again have our button. If we press the button, you can see it flickers, but it actually doesn't do anything yet. We have our hello world there. If we do a rotate left here, the screen actually rotates, and you can see that our button resizes. It looks okay. If I drag my emulator back over, I can flip it back. So we have a button. Let's take this background green back off. We don't really need that. Let me save that here. Go back to the emulator, and you can see, hey, we've got green. The green went away. We can see instantly the grace on there. So you have that live reload. You can go put controls on. You can edit your views, and you don't lose the state of your app. So that's cool, but our control really doesn't do anything yet. So let's see how the debugging works. So let me just stop the app here, because you can't do the live debug and do coding events. So let's change this to add a click handler, and actually let me change the name of this button to something like cool button, just so that we have a better name here. So when I do this new event handler, so that it's kind of weird. I've seen this bug where it says it can't actually fire that thing off. Let me try that one more time here. Okay, so it does this ensure event handler has failed. Okay, so the code we're gonna need is this right here. We basically get a routed event through. We don't really need to do anything with that, except for what we do need to do is when we click the button, we want something to happen. So let's make this text box change from hello world to something else. So let's give this a name of, we're gonna call this text box. I don't really know. I'm super creative today. So let's change text box dot text equal to cool button was clicked. All right, so let's build this right here and see what happens. All right, so that'll build successfully. Let's go run that quick. All right, so we're back, it's running. I'm gonna put a breakpoint right here in the code, and I'm just gonna click this button really quick. And you can see now we got our breakpoint coming in. You can see, we see some debug code here that's coming from the droid object folder. So if I step in here, it's a little weird, but you can see that textbox.text says it's equal to hello world here. It's a little bit slower, but it actually works. So it works just like you would with debugging C#. So we got our event happening. It changed the button. We got live reloads, and we have debugging from Android. So that's cool. So let's flip that over. And I'm going to try it one more time. I mean, there's nothing really special about doing a UWP app. So let's go to the WASM quick. Let's do another breakpoint there. And let's just start it here. Let's click on this button here to see if our debug works. And it's not working by default. So what we actually have to do here is stop the app, go into the WASM, go into the properties, and go into the launch settings. And then once you're in these launch settings, what you have to do is go find the IIS Express, find where it says launch browser, and add this line of code. I will put a link to this in the description also below, but this inspect URI is what tells it how to connect to the browser and to allow debugging to happen. So let's save this, rerunning the WebAssembly. So here we have our app back up now. It's running. So I click the button, we got this. It didn't actually do the debug thing. Let's double check. Make sure we still got that breakpoint there. All right, here is our breakpoint. Let's put this on this line here, see if that matters at all. Okay, for this time, it actually hit the breakpoint. I'm not sure why, but we can see here when we hover over it, it looks like this is taking a little bit while longer to go. My system's probably taxed recording and doing everything, but you can see here that we can see the WASM. We can see a stack trace here of raised calls. There should be autos loaded as well, and you should also be able to see the inspection and do all that, but you can do all that with the browser, so that's pretty cool. So we made an app. We deployed it to Android, UWP, and WebAssembly, and we got the live reloading to work with WebAssembly and Android, and then we got breakpoints to be hit from WebAssembly and Android, so that was really cool. And so it seems like it has some promise, but the real question is what can you do with it? Because I know you can't just use whatever controls you want. I don't think they're all supported under Android and iOS or even Mac. So one thing that you can do is you can come out here and look at the list of views implemented in Uno. And this actually gives you the controls that you can go back to in the toolbox. So if we were to go back to this main page here, let me stop my app so I can actually see my toolbox window. You can see that there's the common controls here. And you can see some ones like, I think color picker is here. So color picker isn't going to be on, I don't believe is going to be on this list of supported apps. We have like app bars, frames, grid views. So a lot of the common stuff that you use. But if you come down here farther, you can actually see like item wrap grid is only for Android and iOS. Select platforms let you use these controls here. And then ones that completely aren't implemented are down here. So if you're thinking about creating an app and you absolutely need a rich text block, you might have to do something different. They are taking issues on their GitHub page, but just want you to be aware that not everything is completely implemented. But that brings us to the next point of the Uno gallery. Uno is going out and making controls, kind of like how Flutter does it as well. But these are using Google's Material Design and Windows Fluent Design. They also have native ones as well. So if you don't choose anything, I think it chooses the native one by default. I'm not 100% sure on the native right now. But if you come out here to this gallery, I think you can download this to your Android or iPhone as well. There's a button here where you can toggle this between dark and light mode and see how these controls react when you switch that. But if you actually click on View Component here, then you can see so buttons are here. If we click over here, you can actually see the code that you need to put these in your app. If you click over to Fluent, you can see what a default button looks like. Obviously, it looks like a Microsoft button compared to the Google Material button. If we come over here for something like Card is a material design only thing, but you can see which package it's in. So you can use these, you can mix and match. You can make your app kind of work how you want. You can use a floating action button. And they have the code here for how that works. So they do have these cool ones already defined for you, whether if you want like an indeterminate progress bar or the Windows style one. But you can make that look how you want to on your app. And this is where, if you wanted to do something specific for Windows and the web, you could use like the Fluent ones, or you could go into those other projects and use the material design ones to make it consistent for Android or iOS, or choose the native implementation, whatever you want to do there. The other thing they give you is these like acrylics that let you do these transparent colors, transforms, brushes. So there are some other things that you can do out there, but these are really the features that they have out here for you to go out and play with. Other things like sliders, and these aren't the only controls that are coming though, because Microsoft is actually working on something else called WinUI 3, and Uno already has pre-release alpha support for the first version. I watched a conference video yesterday or a couple days ago, and they were talking about releasing another preview here soon and how they've been making these all work. But these are the latest controls, and the cool thing about WinUI 3 is that if you're on Windows 10, WinUI 2 controls, or some of these other controls that we've been showing that are the Windows controls, are controlled by which version of Windows 10 you have. So if you have an older version of Windows 10, some of the controls aren't compatible. With WinUI 3, you can actually deploy those separately and download that package separately, so it's not bundled into your operating system. So kind of like with .NET Core, how you don't need to have a specific version of Windows to get that version of .NET Core, the same is true for WinUI 3. It's outside of the operating system. If you guys got value out of this, please hit the thumbs up or mash down on that subscribe button.